Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another episode of Should You Pull for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now this week we're going to be discussing the two banners that come along with the Sanctuary Keeper raid, so that's Lenna and Cypher's banner, including their EX and EX realizations, as well as a rerun of Ace and Faris's as a banner as well, so we have a couple of older units to look at as well. And we're also going to be taking a look at not only the Sanctuary Keeper event itself, but also Dimensions End 11. So if that's stuff that you want some help with, or stuff that you want to know which characters are going to be useful for that kind of event, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we move on to all the events and the banners and all that good stuff, I just want to invite you guys to take a look at all the social media links in the description box below. So that's Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. Now my Twitch has been doing really quite well recently, and I really just wanted to extend a massive thank you to all of you guys that came to my birthday stream on the 26th of May. It was absolutely fantastic. We didn't actually have an awful lot of new content to go through when it came to doing anything in Opera Omnia, but I did actually manage to finish my reclears of Dimensions End 8 and 9 using certain characters, one of which may or may not have been Yang, so that was really cool. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you guys that came along for that. It made it a really special day, despite the fact that obviously we're all in quarantine and no one really wants to celebrate their birthday on their own or anything like that, so it really did make a massive difference to me, so thank you very much. And of course with Patreon, I'd like to shout out one of my patrons at random so that I can give my thanks to those of you that want to support the channel further, and I do so with these bespoke title cards, and I really want to make sure that you guys get all the attention that you deserve. And today that person is going to be Multiracial Lion, who is actually somebody that I've known for quite a long time now, back before even my TCG for FF days, so thank you ever so much for your support. Don't forget to check out Dissidia DB, Dissidia Info and the Tombury Troop's websites, all for any information you need regarding Opera Omnia, and of course don't forget to check out all of the other content creators besides me. So now we come to the part of the video where we start to talk about the events that we have lined up for this week. And with this particular event with the Sanctuary Keeper, it's a raid. So it's one of those events where we'll go over it repeatedly through Cosmos co-ops, EX co-ops for those who can't manage the Cosmos co-ops, and over and over again until we get all the rewards out of it that we can. However, there is obviously going to be a Chaos mission for this, and against the Sanctuary Keeper, it's just a singular wave against the Sanctuary Keeper itself, which you might remember from Final Fantasy X, and it will be accompanied by a Jekt mannequin, which it will continually resurrect if you keep killing the Jekt mannequin. So honestly, most of your attention is going to want to go toward the Sanctuary Keeper itself. The main kind of points of this particular event are debuff evasion and putting debuffs on the enemies. Bear in mind that Seifer and Lenna are the two primary characters when going into this particular fight. Honestly, you're going to want some debuff evasion going into this. If you haven't got Lenna, or if you don't want to pull for Lenna, then make sure you bring somebody like Ignis, Selphie or Warrior of Light so that you can at least get rid of some of the debuffs that the enemies put on. Because the Sanctuary Keeper puts two nasty debuffs with its recast attack, namely Blind and Stop. Now what Stop does is it stops your EX gauge from refilling, which is very, very bad when you're going into any kind of high difficulty fight. So you really want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So Lenna, honestly, as we'll get to when I talk about her in the banner and the Should You Pull part of it, is going to be a really, really potent character for this. Honestly, 90% of clears that you're going to see from this event are going to have Lenna in their teams. However, like I said, if you don't particularly want to use her, then you do have alternatives in characters like Selphie and Ignis, which will work quite well. Though you're going to want a lot of Brave Shaving in particular if you're going to be taking those two, or one of those two, to accompany them, because obviously their Brave Shaving skills is pretty much nothing, and they do like to gain a lot of bravery, and the Jekt mannequins like to throw out HP attacks quite a lot, so you want to make sure that you're keeping on top of that where possible, because where Cypher comes into this is he inflicts loads of debuffs. So if you're able to kind of find other ways to do that, or even, I mean, the debuffs aren't quite as important, to be honest, and you don't really have to worry about that, but Cypher's damage is actually very high when against debuffed enemies, and you'll see that as we go into him when we look at the characters on the banner. But honestly, you could replace them with any really strong damage dealer. So if you wanted to bring like Vayne or Leo or Aranea or anything like that, they don't resist anything in particular, so you can replace Cypher with pretty much any really strong damage dealer. The third character, honestly, a tank is probably your best bet, because it's going to ward Jekt off more than anything. So if you have Snow, then fantastic, he's going to serve perfectly here. But equally, Zac and, like I said, Warrior of Light will do well here as well, just to keep the Jekt away from you, so that when you're doing, like, if he's doing HP damage, he's doing it to the person that can take it, and if you're able to heal that back, it's going to help you absolutely masses. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is it looks like the Sanctuary Keeper doesn't have all that much health, but he does heal himself, and he does so, and he gets HP regen, so you really want to make sure that you're hitting him pretty hard. If you have a Dispeller, somebody like Vanille or Faris, who is actually on the banners as well, then they're going to serve very well as well. But honestly, don't use this as a reason to pull for a Dispeller, because there are other, like, we will get a really strong Dispeller coming along while this event is still live. So don't panic if you don't have one, because when Arciella comes around, honestly, she could do the job as a support / dispel unit with just a 15 and 35, and even if you don't get her EX, she's still going to do the job. So there's plenty of characters that you can use for this, as long as you take along a defensive support character, ideally with debuff evasion. So if you don't have Lenna, then Selfie, Warrior of Light, or Ignis are your best bets. Then you want a strong damage dealer as well, so to replace Cypher. So Cypher can be replaced with, like I said, any strong, like single target even isn't too bad, because the Ject isn't your primary target, he's just like an extra. So Leo Shock won't do as much damage, but you can still make sure the Precision Strike is on the Sanctuary Keeper and just delay him to the end of the earth. And then you're going to want somebody that's going to want to kind of mitigate the damage that you're taking, whether it be an alternative healer, so somebody like Porum would work very well as well, or a tank, basically someone that stops you from getting hit from large HP damage. Like if the Sanctuary Keeper breaks you during its recast, it'll probably kill one of your units, so you want to stop that from happening. So you want supports, you want basically ways of mitigating damage, and you want to be able to churn out a large amount of damage in turn. Now, the other event that we have to look at today is actually going to be Dimensions End Entropy 11. So we've got this coming up, and we've actually got Dimensions End Entropy 12 coming up very soon. And I actually spent the last couple of weeks on stream re-clearing Dimensions End 1 through 9, because I actually plan to make like a Dimensions End video series that will take like a player who's not done any of it from 0 to 12. So you've got that to look forward to. But for the time being, we're going to talk about Dimensions End Entropy 11. And the main thing with this is that you're not going to want to bring anyone magic damage related, because everything resists magic in this, and you're going to want to bring a way of dealing with debuffs, because every enemy in this entire fight brings debuffs along. So you've got to be really careful. Basically, any of the things that you would use for the Sanctuary Keeper raid will actually apply here as well, but obviously you'll be restricted by the character that you've used in previous Dimensions End tiers. But if you haven't used Lenna already, she is literally perfect for this particular fight. She's not magic based, she's ranged based, which makes her actually half decent damage on top of everything else, because she actually gets some damage when she gets her EX realization. She has debuff evasion in her kit, she has healing out of her backside, because not only do you get HP regen in each character's turn, you get an extra HP regen for everyone during her turn, so everyone's health can stay everyone can stay healthy. Then you're also going to want to bring a tank along. Like, tanks are really highly recommended for this particular fight, and the reason that I wanted Snow as badly as I did, which I now have, by the way, because apparently birthday miracles can happen, and I finally got my Snow EX yesterday. So the reason I wanted him as badly as I did is because having a tank actually just takes away so much pressure from the fight in terms of survival. If you don't have access to a tank that's still available, because obviously many people's tanks have already been used across the board in their Dimensions End clears, then Porum makes for a suitable replacement, because at least with her you can mitigate a lot of the HP damage that you're taking, so it makes it so that you're not nearly as frightened of massive AoE Brave HP attacks that just one-shot you, because there are enemies, particularly in Wave 3 and 4, that will do that. So the Atlas in particular will just, he's got high turn rate when he punches you, and if he punches and breaks you, he might just turn around and go, do you know what, bang, everyone's dead. And then the Death Gaze is in Wave 3. They also, most of their stuff is single target, as is the first two waves, which is why a tank is so popular for this. But when they do use AoE attacks, if they break you, they could just turn around and kill you. But as a rule of thumb, when it comes to any difficult content, don't let things break you. It's pretty, that's fair, unless you know you can come back from it, because that's just a general rule of thumb for any difficult content. But in terms of like a damage dealer, honestly, if you haven't got any of the characters on this banner pretty much gives you the characters that you would want for Dimensions End 11 in Cypher and Lenna, because they both actually fulfill their jobs in this particular fight absolutely fantastically. If you have Ramza, then I have Ramza, and I have chosen not to use him for Dimensions End 11, because I've left him at base EX in Dimensions End 1. But if you have already cleared Dimensions End 1 and you still have Ramza spare, he is brilliant for this if you have him purpled, because his damage per turn is so exponentially greater than most characters just because his Brave and HP attack plus are free. He can just go through things and just basically make it so that none of his turns actually are turns. So your turn count at the end is going to be much lower than it would be with many other characters. Then if you're wanting to, you could bring along just a high damage dealer instead of Cypher, like Jack. If you have Jack, he is fantastic for this. As a matter of fact, you can go through most things at this point in time with Jack. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen a duo run of Snow and Lightning, so Lightning could be somebody that you consider as well. As a matter of fact, I do want to turn attention to this lovely sample team list that's been put up on the Tombury Troops website, because they've done so much research into what people have done previously through the JP version of the game and what people are planning to do, that I definitely wanted to give a quick highlight and a shout out to the Tombury Troop for doing so, because their information is so invaluable and so concise, and I have so much respect and thanks for those guys for putting these stuff out there. So if you wanted some examples for teams that you could use for Dimensions End 11, then look no further and have a look at this. So now we come to the part of the video where we take a closer look at the characters that we have coming out on the banner that's coming, and as with most banners, I tend to only go over anything new that's coming out, so we're going to be discussing Lenna and Cypher, and therefore not Fang or Ace or Faris, because they don't bring anything new to the table. They're just being re-released for the sake of synergy more than anything. But first things first, we're going to talk about Lenna, because she gets a slight rework, and a lovely one for that matter, and her EX realization, because she already has her EX. Now, so what you can see here is that Rapid Fire gets expanded so that it does an HP attack on the first use of Rapid Fire. So you don't have to get to Rapid Fire Plus in order to be able to get an HP attack, which is absolutely fantastic, and it infuriated me so much that you'd have to use Rapid Fire first before you could actually really use Lenna's or any of her skills at all, really. Like, Winddrake's Ward was fine on the first use, but Rapid Fire was just terrible. It also inflicts some of the debuff that it would have done already based on how many hits you land with Rapid Fire on the first use. And I cannot stress enough, the fact that you get this straight off the bat actually makes her a much better character. And then it also has a bit of Brave Overflow, which it did actually already have before, but the actual thing that gets the main amount of Brave Overflow is Winddrake Arrow, which has its hit count increased to 2, and it also has up to 150% max Brave Overflow when you're using the plus version of itself, and 120% without it. So from the beginning, she doesn't have to spend as long sort of charging up to get to her amazing support capabilities. The main reason that people take Lenna into fights is Winddrake's Arrow, because the buff that you get from Winddrake's Ward, which also, as for her last rework done, has Brave Regen, but the main thing you want from it is a complete immunity to debuffs. So the reason that she's as good as she is, and she has been consistently good since she very first came out. She had when her 35 first came out, you had Winddrake's Ward to begin with, and there was nothing quite like it. When her EX first came out, she had a bit more longevity, and then with her EX realization and her new rework, honestly, her longevity just goes through the roof. She also gets a Brave Attack Plus from here, and as you can see, she doesn't have an HP Attack Plus, and she never got that until now, but her EX realization honestly just makes me warm and fuzzy inside, and now I'm going to show you why. So taking a look at Brave Phoenix, which is, I mean, I've had Lenna's EX for a long time, and I've used it for a very long time, and I can't wait to be using it again. It gives a nice Brave HP attack that gives everybody a little bit of bravery at the end of it, so it's battery based as well, but it also grants another buff called Princess of Tycoon, which is Party Brave Regen. Bear in mind that Winddrake's Ward already has regen as well as HP regen, so you just get loads of, at the beginning of every turn, your stats are just going whew, every turn. And it also raises your initial bravery as well, so it works really well with certain other characters as well. But you didn't really get an awful lot out of the Power Stones from it. But let's take a look at the realization. With just a book, it basically makes it so that it hits more, you get more Brave Overflow. It's nice, but it's not anything major. The rework, however, means that she's actually still pretty good at 0 out of 3, because the primary reason you're wanting her is for those regens and for the Winddrake's Ward debuff evasion. It's a huge thing for her, and the fact that she can hit even a little bit harder makes a massive difference. And then she gets more stats out of her 1 out of 3, which is actually better than you think, because Lenna's biggest issue before is that she hit like a wet noodle. So with these buffs with ingots, it actually makes a huge difference to her. And then 2 out of 3, she also gets a max bravery overflow limit buff across your party in addition to the framed buff she already has. So that's a fantastic extra to an already really strong buff. So her 2 main buffs are just fantastic, and they raise the brave overflow of her own stuff as well, so she can now hit relatively hard as well. She also gets Princess of Tycoon from the beginning, so you've got that brave overflow just permanently there, and that's really useful. First turn, doesn't consume ability use, no action delay, doesn't increase turn count, so you can just, if you need Winddrake's Ward plus from the beginning, you just do it. Or if you really wanted to, you could Winddrake's Ward and then Rapid Fire, or Rapid Fire then Winddrake's Ward, so that you just have the plus versions from the first turn, and it's a massive, massive difference. And then when using Brave Phoenix, it also extends the duration of Princess of Tycoon by 4 turns, so basically you're just not going to run out of this ability. That debuff, unless it gets removed somehow miraculously, it's just not going to go anywhere. And then at 3 out of 3, and you'll laugh at how much I appreciate this, she finally gets an HP attack plus. So it's huge, the amount of stuff that actually gives her, because her biggest problem was that she realistically just had to be using skills or her bravery attack in order to get anything. And this HP attack plus is actually pretty good, because it's a brave HP attack that batteries the party, including herself. So she actually can save herself from some breaking, even if she's only doing HP attack. But when using Brave Phoenix as well, it gets much, much stronger, massive Brave Overflow, it hits way harder, and it also heals the party, like when you use it. So it's like, is there anything support related that Lenna doesn't do? There's, like, she has Brave Overflow, she has HP regens, she has Brave regen, she has initial bravery buff, she has an initial bravery debuff that can actually be very strong against a single target, and it does help quite a lot against enemies that just raise their bravery rather than actually like hit you for it. And then she's just got like the debuff evasion that's literally perfect. Like, honestly, Lenna is one of my favorite characters in this game, and I cannot wait to use her again. Now, so let's go on to Cypher. Now, Cypher was always a little bit of a lackluster debuffer slash damage dealer in the past, but you'll be pleased to know that his rework and his EX are actually really quite good. Like I've said before, when it came to June and July, there's a lot of banners that are going to have a lot of really strong characters on it, and this is one of them. Cypher, like I said, he didn't really hit all that hard to begin with, but with no mercy, you'll get a much bigger hit count. You'll get splash damage on it, like for multiple targets, so it does a single target HP attack where it didn't even have one to begin with. Really, it had one, but it was just a single target brave HP attack, and it didn't really do a lot. Whereas now you get splash damage on it, and you also get a really nice framed buff called Sorceress's Knight, which is attack up, max bravery up, and enfeeblement up, which means that you're more likely to hit with status effects, which many of his skills actually do. And he's got an HP attack that comes off of it and a brave attack that comes off of it after the rework, which basically makes it like an AoE ranged brave attack HP attack. So off an HP attack plus, that's actually pretty solid, and it's split AoE HP. So this makes Cypher actually a really good farmer as well, if you're still looking out for a farmer. And then the brave attack plus is just a really strong brave attack that's 2-hit and AoE, so he's going to be able to keep his bravery up whenever he needs. He's also going to get a set defense down, which gives him the ability to lower enemy defenses, which is actually really important for his kit, because Cypher needs enemies to be debuffed for him to really hit hard. So once you, like as you can see there with set defense down extend, it actually increases his attack while an enemy is afflicted with debuffs, and that's actually like the primary thing for his kit. Bloodfest actually does a lot of damage as well. It's got a 5-hit brave count, which is AoE. It hits really hard. It's got an HP attack attached to it. It's got a massive overflow on it now, and it does debuffs at the same time. And it's basically Sorceress's Knight is just permanently attached to him, because he's going to have it whether he's using his brave, either of his skills. He's just going to have it at all times. And then when we get to looking at his EX, it's actually going to expand his scope for damage really quite far. So if you're looking for a damage dealer slash debuffer, and you're looking for somebody that's going to do really well in both the Sanctuary Keeper raid and Dimensions End 11, Cypher's actually pretty solid for it. Now, up until now, while Cypher is like quite a strong like AoE damage dealer, got some nice debuffs, he doesn't really have anything that separates him from the pack. Like damage dealers, as I've said previously with characters like Jack, who does actually do a lot more damage than Cypher does, I still think that damage dealers are like the most easily power crept characters in the game, because they're always releasing more. But there is something nice about Cypher's kit, which is his EX. Now, True Demon Slice is yet again, an AoE Brave HP attack that does more damage to debuff targets. It does 50% splash damage, but it also inflicts a framed debuff called Scars of Destruction on all enemies for 1 turn, or for their next turn, which reduces their speed, and more importantly, reduces any bravery damage they deal to 0. So if you're scared of certain bosses, and these do come up quite nastily in DE11 and in the Sanctuary Keeper raid, where you're scared that they're going to do an AoE Brave HP attack and kill you, Cypher actually makes it so that that's a much harder thing for them to do. So this is just his base EX as well. My only issue with it is that it could be a little bit faster, but it gets fixed quite nicely with his realization. He also gets another framed buff from this called Young Revolutionary, which if you've seen Edgar's EX, you'll be reminded of that, because it raises attack and it also raises the damage he deals based on the number of the debuffs the enemy already has, and extends the duration of buffs that he already has. So basically, he's not going to run out of his own buffs. He's just not going to. But when we put ingots into it, or books and ingots, book and 1 out of 3 is standard fare. Just gets more Brave Overflow, gets a bit more damage, gets a bit more of this. It's nothing too crazy. However, 2 out of 3, he gets his Sorceress Knight buff from the beginning, so he can go straight in for HP attack plus if he doesn't want to use his skills. And he also starts with his EX gauge. Now his EX, when you put 3 ingots into it, becomes an absolute monstrosity of a damage dealer. And because you're starting with the EX gauge maxed, you're not having to charge it up the first time round, because when you charge an EX the first time, it's slower than the recast rate. So like, you know, when you see when it comes to putting power stones into things, it will say slightly cast raises recast rate of True Demon Slice, not the cast rate. So you're not having to deal with that first charge up when an EX is maxed out from the beginning, and that means that you're going to be using it that much more frequently. So that's always worth paying attention to. And then with 3 out of 3, it gets a 5-hit AoE Brave attack, single target HP attack triggered twice, but bear in mind that this has splash damage on it, and it's a 10-hit AoE HP Brave attack that's going to be dealing a lot of damage. Like, if they've got debuffs on them, which they should do, because otherwise you wouldn't be using Cypher, you're going to be hitting 9s across the board, almost certainly. And then you're going to be getting a Brave attack plus and an HP attack plus, which actually, his HP attack plus is really quite solid. Like, it's 150% max overflow, it's AoE, 2-hit Brave and HP attack. He hits really quite hard. The problem I have with Cypher is that, like Jack before him, it's all it really does. Apart from that debuff that you get from his EX, which is only 1 turn long, there are other characters that are more inclined to do this debuffing game. Like, we see Kefka come back again in the next few weeks, or like at the end of this month, and he actually, I think, does a very similar job to Cypher, albeit slightly better, if you ask me. But Cypher is actually a very good character. Like, the way that they've reworked him, they've really kept the character intact, they've really kept his kit intact, they've just turned the volume up to 11 on him, and the same goes for Lenna. Honestly, this is actually a very strong banner, and it's just, like, when I get to the actual should you pull part of the video, it's a really good banner, but there's a lot of really good banners, like this month and next, there's so many, that it's going to be really difficult to make decisions on where your resources are going to go. When it comes to artifacts for these two, Cypher is a damage dealer. You're going to want attack 108 on him. However, you could also settle for Unruly Super Senior Boost, which gives him more bravery damage on group attacks. So basically, if you stack those up, then it's going to work really nicely. But other than that, so between attack 108, max brave 330, and Unruly Super Senior Boost, those are the 3 artifacts that you'll want to be going for Cypher. With Lenna, honestly, before now, Initial Bravery. That was all you wanted with Lenna, because all of her stuff scaled off of Initial Bravery, and that's what you wanted her to do. However, because of her rework and her realization, she can actually do some pretty solid damage now, like actual damage, which she's never really been that great at. So giving her attack 108 max bravery actually isn't that bad either. Like, if you can give her attack with a combination of attack 108, initial bravery 170, and max brave 330, you're pretty sold when it comes to Lenna, honestly. So now we come to the big question, of course. Should you pull for Cypher, Lenna, and Fang, or for the returning banner that contains Ace and Faris EX? Now, I've honestly not given an awful lot of attention to Ace and Faris' banner because I don't think it's worth pulling for at this time. If you're a massive fan of either of those characters, sure, go for them. Ace, however, is a really quite outdated magic damage dealer. He's not going to keep up with some of the characters that are available or coming up soon. There are supports that can deal damage on a similar scale to him, like Hope. So honestly, I would leave Ace behind for a while. He's still fine, but there are better characters than him. And Faris, like, I love using Faris. I've used her since she came out with Agrius EX, and I really like using Faris. However, if you're after a Dispeller, what we get next week is going to be stronger than her. Like, Arciella just blows Dispellers out of the water. She does so much more. I really like Faris, and if you really wanted her, she is good, and I do value her as a character, and I still use her now. I just wouldn't put resources into her at this point in time because of how many other strong banners there are. Lenna and Cypher. Now, this banner has had me scratching my head on how to advise people to pull for this or not. Now, if you don't have a really strong character with debuff evasion, you pull on this banner. Lenna is the best character, in my eyes, for debuff evasion because she provides so many other buffs. I have used Lenna when her 35 came out, I have used her when her EX and her first rework came out, and I will use her now, and I will fully realise her. She will work at 0 out of 3 if you're strapped for ingots, but her 3 out of 3 is just so good, and she is the prime character to use in Dimensions End 11 that I think that you would be remiss to not have her. But there are so many other support characters coming up as well that if you have debuff evade characters, I would never say skip her because she's really good. But if you have other priorities, you could live without her. Cypher, I think, is really good, but I think he's like, you can live without him. I liken Cypher to characters like Fran, where they're really good characters, but you never need them. Like, he's very powerful. There are a lot of really powerful characters out there, but if you already have Lenna, like I do, I wouldn't go on this banner just for Cypher alone, unless you're a fan of his. Because while he is really good, I think my resources, and after having spent 400 tickets on Snow, don't judge me, but I really damn well wanted him, I need to recuperate, and this banner is not going to suck up any more of my resources when I know that I've got Arciella coming out, I've got Alphino coming out, I've got Kais coming out. There are a lot of characters that take precedence over Cypher. I would like to have him, sure. Same as I'd love to have Jack. So it's one of those cases where I think that if I get lucky next week, like with Arciella, maybe I'll come back and throw a few tickets at Cypher. But if you're fine for damage dealers, if you already have a team set up for Dimensions End 11, then don't go pulling for Cypher. You don't need to. If you're lacking Lenna and Cypher, at least consider tickets with this because she is what you ultimately need from this banner. Cypher is just something you would want from it. And I think that if you were, like I said, it's similar to the Jack and Ramsar banner. If you're a newer player, this banner is fantastic. And it actually complements the Jack and Ramsar banner perfectly because you have offensive support in Ramsar, defensive support in Lenna, like a high damage dealer in Jack, and then a debuffer in Cypher. Like, it just captures all the bases perfectly. So if you're a new player, yeah, this banner is fantastic. If you don't have Lenna, this banner is pretty damn good. If you have Lenna and you're not too fussed about DE11 and getting your damage dealers and stuff like that, you can skip it. I'll probably skip it because I need to recuperate resources for the next few weeks. You don't have to, but I would advise against leaving it if you already have Lenna. So that's going to be it for today's video. Let me know in the comments below who you plan to take for the Sanctuary Keeper Raid Chaos for Dimensions End Entropy 11 or 12 for that matter. Let me know whether you plan to pull for Lenna, whether you plan to pull for Cypher, whether you plan to pull for Ace and Faris even, or whether you're going to realise and spend your ingots on these characters. And let me know which banners are coming up, obviously in the near future, that you may ward away from this banner like I will be to try and save up for. Anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. As I've said earlier, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell for notifications. And as always with Twitch, I will be streaming these events every single time that they come out because I love sharing like my own experiences with these events with you guys, and we all chat and we strategize and do all that stuff. So it's really good fun. And thank you once again, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.